Everyone, and welcome to a Champions League predictions video for the first leg of the quarter final ties. We'll be going through each of the games that are coming up in the quarterfinals first leg on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 8th and 9th of April. Starting off with Arsenal versus Real Madrid. Now, coming into this game, in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, in the previous round, Arsenal absolutely battered PSV Eindhoven 9-3 on aggregate. The first leg over in the Netherlands, a 7-1 victory for Arsenal, and then 8 days later, a 2-2 draw against PSV Eindhoven. Real Madrid in the previous round, having to face Atletico Madrid. In the first leg, 2-1 win for Real Madrid, and in the second leg, in what was a slightly controversial penalty shootout.
Match starts in 30 minutes. Who will win?
Okay, that was rude from SofaScore to interrupt, but hang on, just gonna... There we go. I don't know whether you heard that or not, but here we are. But, Real Madrid in the first leg beating Atletico Madrid 2-1, and it had to go down to a penalty shootout, in which there was actually a controversial penalty by Julian Alvarez in that game. And ultimately, Atletico Madrid lost 41 penalties after a 1-0 victory on the night. And so Arsenal and Real Madrid meet in the knockout phase. As of their recent games, well, first of all, the last time these two played each other was actually in the International Champions Cup in pre-season on the 24th of July 2019, in which Real Madrid won 3-2 on penalties on the back of a 2-2 draw. And the last time they faced in the Champions League was back in 2006, where I think it was in round of 16, Arsenal winning 1-0 in aggregate against Real Madrid there. Arsenal's most recent game was a 1-1 draw against Everton, in which saw them slip points behind Liverpool. They are currently second in the Premier League table. And Saka, who has recently returned to the first team squad after an injury that's lasted for nearly 4 months, has already got into scoring form in their 2-1 win against Fulham back on Tuesday, April the 1st. Real Madrid's most recent game was a 2-1 defeat to Valencia. They have slipped further behind FC Barcelona, who, by the way, drew to Real Betis, which we'll get into a bit more. And in their other game, they were in the Copa del Rey. It was the second leg of I think it was the semi-final. I'll just have a quick look. Yeah, it's a semi-final, and ultimately, after extra time, after a 4-4 draw, Real Madrid will go through an aggregate. I think as of now, Real Madrid and Arsenal are both a little bit inconsistent in their domestic leagues, and are both runners-up at the moment, and most likely will probably end that way for them both. But looking at Real Madrid's recent La Liga games, 2-1 defeat to Valencia, 3-2 win against Leganes, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, 2-1 win against Villarreal, a 2-1 win against Rayo Vallecano, a 2-1 defeat against Real Betis. So overall, it's been okay, but there are a few little hiccups here and there. And it's the same thing for Arsenal as well, who are miles behind Liverpool in the title race. If it is even a title race. A 1-1 draw against Everton on the weekend, 2-1 win against Fulham. Before the international break, they had a 1-0 win against Chelsea, a 1-1 draw against Manchester United, 0-0 draw against Forest, 1-0 defeat against West Ham, 2-0 win against Leicester. So ultimately, it has all been quite wobbly for them both. And in the Champions League phase, Arsenal finished in third, and Real Madrid had a really underwhelming performance, finishing in 11th, and ultimately having to beat Manchester City in the knockout playoffs to get to the round of 16, the first place where they meet City rivals Atletico. I think ultimately this is going to be an interest. I think all these ties are quite interesting, to be fair, but it's a bit hard, to what we really expect between Arsenal and Real Madrid. I think ultimately, looking at team streaks, let me just make sure I'm looking at the right things here. Yeah, so in looking at things here, Arsenal haven't lost a game in the last 7. Real Madrid have not kept out a clean sheet. Have not kept out a clean sheet in the last 8. However, in 7 of the last 8 games, Real Madrid have scored more than 2.5 goals. And However, Arsenal in 5 of their last 6 games were the first to score. Real Madrid, 4 in the last 5 have been the first to concede. So, it seems like ultimately Real Madrid are a bit more defensively shaky. But of course, it's the Champions League. It's Real Madrid. What do we expect from them? We'll be expecting a shock, won't we? I think ultimately the first leg, due to home advantage and stuff, I think Arsenal actually might win this game 2-1. I'm not saying that they'll win the entirety of... Well, I'm not saying they'll win the tie. But I think this is going to go... I think the first leg is going to go to Arsenal here. 2-1. The next game on our list is Bayern versus Inter. In the first leg, looking at their most recent Champions League games, or ties even, Bayern Munich coming into the quarterfinals after a 5-0 aggregate win against fellow Germans Bayer Leverkusen, and Inter Milan coming into this tie on the back of a 4-1 aggregate win against Dutch side Feyenoord. Both teams are top of their domestic leagues. Bayern, top of the Bundesliga, and it's only a matter of time before they win that. And looking at Inter Milan in the Serie A, it is actually quite a close race. Napoli have as of the time of this recording, have played 30 games and are on 64 points, and Inter have played 31 games and are on 68. There is a close title race going on in Italy. It's actually been close for quite a bit in the season. Looking at their most recent games, Bayern Munich, by the way, have Borussia Dortmund. But for some reason, they have Borussia Dortmund on Saturday. I just thought I'd let you know. And they could also have Dortmund in the semi-finals as well. But looking at their recent games, Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, 3-1 win against Augsburg, 3-2 win against St. Pauli, a 1-1 draw against Union Berlin, a 3-2 defeat to Bochum. So ultimately, Bayern are in quite good form here. They have not lost a game in the last 4. However, Inter Milan unbeaten in their last 10 games. Looking at their most recent games, they did actually see a 2-2 draw against Parma. They had a 1-1 draw in the Coppa Italia against city rivals Inter Milan in the first leg of that tie. As of the Serie A, in the Serie A, 2-1 win against Udinese, 2-0 win against Atalanta, 3-2 win against Monza. We've gone all the way. A 1-1 draw against title rival Napoli. So again, it's going to be quite a close one. As I've said, Bayern unbeaten in their last 4, Inter unbeaten in their last 10, and in the last 3 times these two teams have actually played each other, with their most recent game against each other being in the Champions League group stage, where the last 2 games were actually both 2-0 wins for Bayern Munich in Group C of the UEFA Champions League group stages in the 22-23 season. Well, actually, it's not actually head-to-head, but both teams have not had a clean sheet in the last 3 games. However, in 6 of their last 8 games, Bayern Munich have scored more than 2.5 goals, but in 4 of their last 5 games, Bayern Munich have been involved in games where both teams have scored, and for Inter, that is the same thing, but 5 out of 6, where both teams scored. Bayern, in 5 of their last 6 games, have been the first team to score, and for Inter, 8 in the last 10. Again, another close tie. I think all of these are close ties, and they are certainly going to be interesting to watch. So I think ultimately, this is tough to separate this. Again, home advantage will be played into account. Of course, Bayern Munich, of course, having the home advantage here. And I think it's going to be quite a close one. I mean, just looking at some bits of data here, both of them have not kept out a clean sheet in the last 3. Both of them have been first to score. And Bayern unbeaten in the last 4. And Inter unbeaten in the last 10. It's going to be hard to distinguish, but I'd have to say Bayern edges this one, 2-1 win. Yeah, 2-1 win for Bayern München. Now to the next game, Barcelona versus Dortmund. And these two teams, well, they are the two highest scoring teams in the Champions League phase. And looking at their recent Champions League ties, Barcelona coming out of a 4-1 aggregate win against SL Benfica, and Dortmund 1-1 draw against Lille, and then a 2-1 win in the second leg to put them through 3-2 on aggregate. So, high scoring tie this may be. And yeah, I think both of these teams have had two very different looking seasons. I mean, already looking at this, Bayern, wrong team. Barcelona have been unbeaten in their last 22 matches. And in Dortmund's last 6 games, no clean sheet. And Barcelona have been the first to score in 7 of their last 8 matches. So, I think ultimately, looking at it, it's not going to be quite as close of a matchup. But then again, football comes with its surprises sometimes. The last time these two teams played each other was actually in the league phase back in December last year, and that was in itself a high scoring game. At the BVB Stadion, or the Signal Iduna Park. I don't know what they call it now. I know on EAFC they call it the BVB Stadion, but that was a 3-2 win for Barcelona. And looking at Barcelona's recent games, they had a 1-1 draw against Real Betis, as mentioned earlier. They won the first leg, I think it was, in the Copa del Rey against Atletico Madrid. And remember, they've been unbeaten in their last 22 matches. La Liga, 4-1 win against Girona, 3-0 against Osasuna, and they played Atletico in the middle of last month, 4-2 win, and a 4-0 win against Temam Real Sociedad back at the beginning of March. And the last time Barcelona lost a game was actually against Atletico Madrid on the 21st of December 2024, and it was also their last game of the calendar year. They're also 4 points clear on top of La Liga. And looking at Borussia Dortmund, well, they've won their last 2 games, 4-1 win against Freiburg and a 3-1 win against Mainz, but losing 2-0 to Leipzig and 1-0 to Augsburg in the Bundesliga as well. So I think ultimately it's been a mixed bag in recent games for Dortmund, but I think this season overall for Borussia Dortmund, they are currently sitting 10th in the Bundesliga. Of course, they made the Champions League final last year. Will they again? I don't think so. Will they make it past Barcelona in the quarterfinals? I also don't think so. They're actually 8th in the Bundesliga, actually. They are 3 points off a Conference League position, which is 6th place in the Bundesliga, right now being held by Mönchengladbach. But my prediction for this one, it's going to be quite a high-scoring game. 3-1 win for Barca. Yeah. A 3-1 win for FC Barcelona there. And our last game of the week, before we do it all over again, Paris Saint-Germain versus Aston Villa. In their recent ties, Paris Saint-Germain dominated both of their ties against Liverpool, although they did ultimately have to get through on penalties, which they did. 4-1 it was. And for Aston Villa, they ran over Club Brugge on 2 occasions. 3-1 win in the first leg, and at home, a 3-0 win against Club Brugge. Looking at their recent games, both of these teams are hot on form at the moment. Looking at them both, Paris Saint-Germain winning in their last 6 games, and Aston Villa winning in their last 8. And Aston Villa in their last 5 games have scored more than 2.5 goals, it says on here. Well, 2 goals, I guess. And they have been the first to score in 7 of their last 8 games. That's Aston Villa. So, looking at where they are in their domestic league, Paris Saint-Germain, who have ultimately lost superstars over the years, they seem to remain unbeaten in Liga A McDonald's. Yeah, quite an interesting name there. And if I just do a quick bit of maths real quick, looking to see whether Liga, hang on. So Marseille currently on 52 points. They're second place behind PSG. They can get a maximum 18 points, which would take them as far as 70 points. However, PSG are on 74. I was just making sure, but yeah, Paris Saint-Germain unbeaten and are confirmed champions of Liga 1 for a 4th time in a row. And ultimately, hang on, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7. I think that'll be their 6th title in 7 years. So yeah, PSG they've absolutely bossed Liga, and they have done for many years. And this season they've gone unbeaten. They've gone all the way to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And as for Aston Villa, they are in a tight European battle, especially battling for Champions League next season, directly against Chelsea, Man City, Newcastle, even Fulham and Brighton are even trying to get there. Aston Villa, will they make it to Europe next season? That's most likely. Will it be Champions League? I mean, look, it's too close to call. They are only 1 point behind 5th place Manchester City. Both played the same amount of games, them and City. And of course, 5th place in the Premier League could become a Champions League spot. Although Newcastle are 1 point behind them with 2 games in hand. So overall, both hot on form. Paris Saint-Germain will have the home advantage here, and also looking at the experience and the lack of experience as well in the same breath. I think also, this is quite a close one to call. But I think PSG, they've kept Liverpool composed well. They've been bossing teams in and around their country. Aston Villa coming out of this with a 2-1 win against Nottingham Forest. Their other recent games include a 3-0 win against Brighton, 3-0 win against Preston in the FA Cup. They even had a friendly game in the international break against Al Ain, who will be in the same group, I think, as Manchester City in the Club World Cup this summer. But that was won by Aston Villa. Aston Villa also beating Brentford 1-0, beating Cardiff in the FA Cup. So, yeah, been hot on form, and their last loss was back on the 25th of February, a 4-1 defeat to Palace. And if to go to the next defeat, you'd have to go to the beginning of February, which was a 2-0 defeat to Wolves. For PSG, looking at their recent games, they've won their last 6. 1-0 win against Angers, a 4-2 win against Dunkerque in the Coupe de France. Look, I'm not too good at French pronunciation. A 6-1 win against Saint Etienne, a 3-1 win against Marseille, and a 4-1 win against Rennes. Their last defeat was actually against Liverpool in the Champions League. And if you wanted to go to their next defeat after that, you'd have to go all the way back to their game against Bayern Munich in November in the Champions League, where they lost 1-0. So they've only lost 1 game in this calendar year, and ultimately lost 2 games since late November. So PSG are just really hot on form. Although I do acknowledge that the majority of these were against teams that are in Liga. Of course, they did beat Manchester City in the Champions League phase as well. They won that game 4-2. This is going to be a tough one to call. I think Aston Villa, they theoretically could hold PSG. But I think ultimately, I think PSG will edge this one 2-1. But yeah, these are tight fixtures that we're seeing, unless it's Barca versus Dortmund. But hopefully you enjoyed that. Just to recap on my predictions, I'm saying Arsenal will beat Real Madrid 2-1. Bayern will beat Inter 2-1. Barca will beat Dortmund 3-1. And PSG will beat Aston Villa 2-1. Yeah, there's 3 of those 4 games I think will end up being 2-1 victories to the home side. Will I be wrong? Possibly yes. And if I get 100% of it right, then boom, I guess. But that is it from Danish friends today. Unless somehow another video is released, but I doubt that will happen. You'll see this video before the Champions League games begin, and we'll have the second leg next week. But that was me. Bye. And if you feel like it, then you can subscribe. Then again, I'm not telling you you should. But you could like the video if you like and subscribe. I'll go now. Bye.